This is a real treat. I get to meet one of the filmmakers from the 10th annual New York Dog Film Festival, John Semper, who's in LA. Those of you that see all the Spiderman behind him, if you've gotten used to watching us on YouTube, he has an extraordinary background in film and continues to work voluptuously and voluminously. John, you couldn't come to New York because you had just been to New York for a big prize, or not a prize, a new series. Explain why. I wish I'd known. I would have come into the city and saluted you with everybody else.
That's my fault. I should have let you know about it ahead of time, but there were many things going
I
on.
can imagine I was not high on your list of priorities for a big event in your own life.
What we were doing, I'm one of the executive producers, and I'm the head writer, the one and only head writer for a TV series called Weather Hunters, which is an animated series that was created by Al Roker, the weatherman from
Wow.
the Today Show.
Wow.
And it is now streaming on PBS and it's airing on PBS. And we produced 40 half hours. I've been working on it for the
Wow.
last 2.5 years, almost 3 years. And we were premiering it. It premiered just about 4 weeks ago on PBS. So you can see it now and you can also see it online. But we were doing a screening at the American Museum of Natural History. We had a screening of several episodes for kids and parents, and Al came and introduced the episodes. And a few of us from the production team were there to answer questions. So that was my big trip for this year to New York.
That is quite an extraordinary achievement. As it turns out, completely pointlessly and parenthetically, my new favorite pickleball partner is a lovely young man who is the meteorologist for CBS News in Albany, just moved from Ohio. Jimmy, and so I've just begun to think that weather hunters are cool. Of course, your weather hunters aren't meteorologists like Al Roker or like Jimmy, but they're another kind of weather hunter.
The show is about a family, and it was patterned after Al's family.
Oh,
So
nice.
the father in the family, Al Hunter, is really basically Al Roker.
That's so
And
cool.
he actually is a meteorologist in the series. It gives us a wonderful platform for him to explain weather phenomena, science phenomena, and
Nice.
to his kids. The lead character is his daughter. Her name is Lily.
I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Those of you that came to the premiere of the 10th Annual Film Festival in New York saw a marvelous, long, and beautiful animated film. I'm forgetting, The Mystery of the Red Ball. What was it called? I'm so bad. I should know it by heart. The Singular
Missing
Affair of
of
the
the
Missing
missing ball,
Ball.
right?
Okay. And it was marvelous. And having been a veteran filmmaker, writer, and creator and producer, I was very proud to have your film in the festival. One of the things that needs explaining, it turns out, because I got a fairly irate letter, the only irate letter I got at all, actually, it in all these years, pretty much of the film festival, someone claiming with a certain amount of moral indignation that your 20-minute film was AI generated in just a few minutes, whereas all the other hardworking filmmakers whose films could have been in the festival instead would spend days, weeks, months, or years creating their films. Now, I think what the reason I reached out to you is to say what aspect of your film was AI, which is a more modern tool for doing many things,
Mhm.
animation being one of them, if you could talk about it proportionally or explain it to me. And when you wrote to me to explain it, I thought we all need some splaining here because
Mhm.
AI is not the work of the devil. It's not the end of creativity as we know it.
Mhm.
I'd love you to talk a little bit about AI as a tool because we'll read, for example, just in the news, oh my God, AI, Amazon, they're laying off 10,000 people. We don't know what that means. What has AI got to do with Amazon? Or a warehouse or anything. And we're talking creative endeavors. So can you tell us a little, because you're at the forefront and have been there for a very long time as a showrunner, which is, you'll also explain in a minute how important that is in television filmmaking. You've been the captain of the ship many times.
I'll start off by saying that I doubt that this conversation is going to change anyone's mind because
Oh,
we are at a phase in this particular technology. And every disruptive technology goes through this. But we're in a phase that I call the religious wars, where
oh,
there are
I
the
like
people
it.
who are there are the people who are almost religiously for a technology, and then there are the people who are almost religiously against it. And, it's really hard for minds to meet when there's that much passion and hostility. We are really at the peak of that right now, and it might even be peaking even further.
Wow.
So I don't think it's really going to change anyone's mind. But I will explain my process in not only making the film, but just investigating AI to begin with. So first and foremost, every disruptive technology disrupts. It
Okay.
changes things.
Yes.
And there hasn't been a single disruptive technology, especially in the visual media, that hasn't gotten people really worked up when it's been introduced. So just as an example, I'm going to use computer animation in general, okay?
Okay.
So 30 years ago, people started using computer animation to create character animated stories.
Okay.
And this outraged a lot of people who felt that animation belonged to the domain of artists who drew on paper,
Hmm.
and then that was transferred to sheets of transparent celluloid, and that was inked and painted by people in a building who sat there and painted them and inked them, and that was the process.
That's
And when
right.
computers came along and started animating characters, the people who were part of the normal process were outraged. And there was a lot of talk about how it was going to put people out of work. And there were even one or two animators, I believe, who committed suicide.
For real?
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a big deal. It was a very big deal. And there was at least one prominent animation historian in LA who was outraged that this digital technology was intruding on the domain of this precious art of animation that was known to be a certain way. All right, fast forward 30 years later, and the biggest box office movies now are computer animated.
Right.
And people don't even think about whether anything disrupted hand-drawn animation. In fact, hand-drawn animation really isn't as prolific as it used to be. Prolific's not the right word, isn't as
No, but it's not as commonly used.
exactly. And that's how things change. There's always that initial reaction where people are outraged, and then there's always a slow acceptance. Now, I'm not advocating for the change. I'm not saying that, oh boy, I'm really glad that AI is here. What I'm
Right.
saying is AI is here. Let's be realistic.
Yes.
Okay. It's a disruptive technology. Will people be put out of work? Yes, of course. Just like hand-drawn animators were put out of work. And inkers and painters, by the way. There
And
used to be, when I first started my career, I was at Hanna-Barbera, and there used to be a giant building that they built next to the main building. And that giant building was there to house all kinds of people, a huge number of people who simply sat and painted cells all day long, inked
wow.
and painted cells. Then along came Xerox technology, which was used in animation, which got rid of the inkers, but they were still painting the cells. And then
Really?
came digital painting, which completely eliminated all the people in that building. So disruptive technology always puts people out of work. Or that when the wheel was invented, it put somebody out of work. Certainly when the car was invented, it put carriage makers and
Sure.
blacksmiths out of work.
Sure.
So it's inevitable. There's just no way around it. Now, when a technology is invented, it doesn't go away. My feeling is all the classical animators like Disney and Fleischer, Max and Dave Fleischer, and even Hanna and Barbera, they were all eager to embrace new technologies. When xerography came along, Disney embraced it and started using it. And I think the first movie to use it was 101 Dalmatians.
I'll be darned.
So suddenly people weren't inking over the line that the animator had drawn. That line was transferred to Xerox, and you got a kind of a pencilish quality to the image. And that was the new way of doing things. And Disney didn't sit around worrying about whether or not it was going to put people out of work. And that's the other key about disruptive technologies. What makes them disruptive is that they deliver a really excellent result far cheaper and far faster than ever before. That's
Oh,
why they get
yeah.
embraced by the industry.
So you had other examples when you first wrote to me, and I just asked you about your one film, and you explained how many things that aren't even creative endeavors have
Right.
technology that has changed. I'm sure the car is a good example, but also DVDs, right?
Yep. Yep. Again, let's go back. Let's go to music because
Yes,
music used to
it's
be
good.
delivered on a vinyl disc, period. That
Correct.
was the only way you got music distributed. And then
Right.
along came CDs, and everybody said, oh my God, vinyl, it's the only way.
Yeah.
And CDs came, took over. And then eventually people realized that on CDs were simply digital files and they could pull them off of CDs and they could just simply barter with those digital files. And Napster came along and
Right.
people were outraged and the music industry was suing and everybody was unhappy and musicians went crazy. And here we are now, again, 30 years later, and you've got Spotify, you've got Apple Music, you've got people not even really having grown up during a time when music was delivered in a different kind of medium. So every disruptive technology gets embraced because it simply has to be. If it's faster, cheaper, cleaner, easier, it gets embraced. I remember when people got outraged when synthesized music came
I was
along.
just going to bring that up.
Yeah,
Streisand and Sinatra would have full, I don't know, 50-piece orchestras to
yeah,
back them up when they were recording. And Billie Eilish can do what she does in her bedroom. And
exactly.
so these are the kinds of things that someone can say, but the real music is so much better when there was a full string section and percussion behind Sinatra. God, he'd sound horrible with a synthesizer, or Nat King Cole, but they've redone a lot of
Yeah.
those musical expressions, and they
Well,
sound
and the
even
technology
better
got
for
better.
all I know. The
Yeah,
tech,
the
right?
technology got better. It got to the point where it was indistinguishable from instruments.
Yes.
I was watching TV the other day and I realized I was actually watching a series that I like called Vera, and I realized that the entire soundtrack of the show is synthesized.
Wow.
And I'm sure that's true of many TV shows where, and did that put musicians out of work? Absolutely it did.
Yeah.
And does it make it a different kind of medium? Absolutely it does, but it doesn't make it anything less acceptable. And you look at rap, the rise of hip hop and sampling, and the fact that a hip hop artist will get on stage and there are no instruments. There's a guy behind a turntable and he's sampling and doing whatever the heck he does. And there are a lot of
What does
electronic.
sampling mean exactly?
Sampling is when you take a bit of some sound that pre-exists and you use it in a new and different way. So basically you
Ah,
sample that sound. And you might use it as a percussive thing, or you might use it as just a rhythmic thing, or you might loop a rhythm that comes from someplace else and reuse it. Really, that's exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about AI. And people listen to rap music, hip hop music, and they don't bat an eye. They don't sit around worrying about how many musicians were
right.
displaced by that kind of thing. So here's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I advocate putting people out of work. I'm
Of
not
course.
saying that I am a champion of these technologies, but I'm a realist. And what happens is these technologies arrive and you can either bury your head in the sand and say, oh no, I want nothing to do with it,
I'm a purist.
or you can explore. And I love exploring. I get very excited about new technologies simply because I'm curious to see what new avenues they open up for me.
Yes.
I'm a storyteller. So all I'm really interested in is how can I best tell the story? Okay, so getting to and you can jump in at any time.
I just want to clarify that while you've been intimately involved with animation all these years in at a very high level, the Spider-Man series that you were the showrunner for in the 90s, you viewed yourself then and now primarily as a writer. You're a member
Correct.
of the Writers Guild of America. So am I. And ChatGPT is something different than AI. That's another story and another conversation,
Right.
completely different conversation. But the idea that somebody with long history and roots in the industry call you a graybeard, right? You're not an up and comer. You're not
Correct.
fresh out of, if you will, animation school from the Ringling University, that you have seen the long view, you've lived through it, and you say,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I'll dip my toe in here and I'll try this. And what about that? And it's not entirely dissimilar to another filmmaker who was in the Cat Film Festival, who has 2 years ago, she won the Visionary Award as a filmmaker for the Cat Film Festival because as a woman, Social Security age, She has been making films, documentaries, and creative ones her whole life. And she has made so many, and anyone who's been to the Cat Film Festival knows that Kim Best is a treasure because she makes a documentary and she'll do something semi-animated. She does a lot of things with a voiceover or a caption for the cat. Things involve philosophy and things that are not about straightforward cat stuff. But this year, she too, and I don't know how long you've been experimenting with AI, but she experimented with AI to make a film called When Left is Right about Southpaw cats, a left-handed cat. And she was fascinated to try it, to experiment with it, to
Yeah.
grow with it, to
Yeah.
become as modern as she felt like becoming in her creativity. I'm sure that for you and for her in learning and experimenting, it didn't come fast, it didn't come easy, and you must have broken a lot of eggs on the way to making the cake, right?
Absolutely. When I started to do The Singular Affair of the Missing Ball, it was my experiment in finding out if AI could tell a story. Because so this is about 6 months ago, and AI was really in its primitive early stages. And all I was seeing, people were just doing scenes. They do a little shot of a dog jumping into a pool and say, look at the waves and look at the dog. And they do
Right.
another shot of a ballerina and, oh, look at her clothing, the way it lands. And
Yeah.
that was all that was going on. Nobody was actually attempting to tell a story. And I thought, well, with all this talk about how this technology is going to change my industry, let me try to do what I do using this technology and see if
Right.
if I can
And
actually.
not lose your job, for
Right.
example,
Well, and also just find out what it is to not,
and not be scared.
and not be scared. I just undertook to use the tools that were available at that particular time. It was not easy. First and foremost, most of the AI at that time, and by the way, we'll talk about this, but I hate the term AI.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
Years ago, when everything was started to go digital, they put E in front of everything, e-commerce and
Good point.
e-banking and
Yeah. Yeah.
e-toys.
Yeah.
And to me, AI is the E of today. It's the term that people use that they don't really understand what it is, and
No,
they
they don't.
slap it on everything, and it's very vague. It's not very specific. But
Right.
I'll use it for the sake of our conversation. Excuse me. I started using these tools. They were very primitive at the time. For instance, my thing is talking dogs. And
Yes.
I thought when I was conceiving of it, I thought I'll be able to use software to do the lip sync, to synchronize the voices with the mouth
Yes.
movements.
Yes.
And what I discovered fairly quickly was that all of the lip sync programs that were available at that time only wanted to do it for human faces.
Oh, how interesting.
So the whole business of lip sync, I was not able to use the computer at all to do lip sync. I had to do it on my own. And more often than not, I'd get a scene where I just say the character is talking and the lips would move. And then I'd have to sit down and figure out what do I want them to say.
Wow.
And I'd have to get that dubbed in. I basically dubbed in a lot of the voices for the dogs. But so that's how primitive it was. It took a lot of time and it took a lot of effort. And when people say, for instance, the question is, did you use AI? I used Photoshop a lot, and Photoshop now incorporates AI. So
Interesting.
it's really impossible. And just like everything, really AI is going to be synonymous with the word digital because everything digital is going to end up having some AI in it, some artificial intelligence. And it's unavoidable at this point. But at that particular point, I did use a good deal of AI to accomplish things because that was the whole point of the experiment, was to
Right.
see if I could tell a complete story using AI. Yeah, so that's that.
There any time during the creative process that you thought, oh, I'm going to go back to the old way, the way I know I'm comfortable. I know how to get from point A to B. Maybe
Yeah,
it's slower. Maybe it's uses more gas, if you will, but this is miserable. I hate having to learn something new. People hate having to change and learn something new. Did you have that experience?
absolutely, because sometimes it was really harder to
Yes.
use the technology we call AI. For instance, there's a shot with a train, and I could not get the AI to understand that I wanted a train to simply go down a track and look a certain
Really?
way. And yeah, it was really impossible. I got train engines at the back of the train. I got two halves of a train that kind of came together. It was like talking to someone who spoke a foreign language. Neither of us understood one another, and we ultimately I would resort to shouting.
Exactly. Or just run away, go home. Go
And
home with your toys. I think that's really what we're talking about is fear of change,
Yeah,
both on the part of the creator and the recipient of art.
yeah.
And this is perhaps a very poor example, but if you look back to Andy Warhol, who ever thought that was art, guys? He not only took a picture or whatever it is that he got to do the Campbell Soup Cam and all those other images, Marilyn Monroe, but then he just duplicated it, sometimes in different colors, sometimes a little fuzzy. Nobody thought that was art. It was pop art. It wasn't really art. And now, millions of dollars later, but he was experimenting. That was his idea of art. And nobody had seen that before. Or Klaus Oldenburg, like a soft sculpture of a whatever, a melted cheeseburger sewed out of vinyl. And that was pop art too. And it wound up in the Museum of Modern Art and great collections, but at the time was seen as obnoxious almost.
Mhm.
Wait, haven't you guys seen Michelangelo lately? That's art, right?
Right. Yeah. Getting back to Warhol, nobody screamed, why aren't we paying, why isn't he paying the developer of the Campbell
Right.
soup can? Why isn't he giving a royalty to Marilyn Monroe?
Yes.
It's these things always have to get worked out down the line.
Yeah.
Sampling, for instance, getting back to music for a second, initially people sampled and nobody got compensated for that. And then they figured out how to compensate people for sampling. Yeah, they did. And so I think that's, if I'm projecting into the future, I think that eventually people are going to, they're going to figure out how to compensate people for training on AI and all of that kind of stuff. And it's all going to get worked out, but the technology is not going away. It's not going to go away.
If anything, it's improving. You're talking about in a very short period of time, it having gone from being prehistoric in its own evolution to
Yeah.
being much slicker, much easier to use, but it's surely going to get even easier than that.
Well, and better.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, right now you can, if you're very careful and clever about what you do, you can make an AI video or an image that is indistinguishable from reality. And that's very different from when I started. So 6 months ago, that was still spotty. It was very hard to do that. 6 months later, it's much easier. I made another cartoon. I've made one more cartoon since Singular Affair of the Missing Ball. And this time I didn't fight upstream. It's Pixar quality and it looks very CGI, very normal CGI, and it is indistinguishable. Nobody would know that it's AI.
Is it about a dog?
No, unfortunately,
Oh, phooey. We want another John Semper
I'll,
dog movie
I'll
in the
have to do
next dog
something.
film festival. You're gonna, or a cat one, if you're open to
Okay.
kitty cats, because the cat film festival would love to have the Semper touch. I guess really what we're saying is that people read in People magazine or someplace, the National Enquirer, which may not even exist anymore, that some AI generated version of John and me walking on the beach hand in hand is put up somewhere and it looks like John and Tracy walking on the beach, kissing and holding hands. And meanwhile, our husbands and wives are like, what? That's where people, I think, develop some fear.
Yeah,
Just in wrapping up, the fearful part is what
yeah.
if it intrudes on people's lives? What if it rips off real living humans and disrupts their life? That's
Well, and
different.
it will.
It
Yeah,
will.
it will. It absolutely will. And I will point to the internet in general. The internet was developed so that scientists could trade information back and forth. That's what it was created for. And now look what it's used for. And I don't necessarily even know that what it's brought to our lives is good. I don't
Right.
know.
It's a philosophical question to be sure, and used and also abused. It's definitely abused, but there's two or three generations that never knew a time when it didn't exist. And we
Absolutely.
oldsters have now embraced it, and we know how to talk to our computer and ask it stuff. You know how to ask it to do stuff, which is pretty cool. John Semper, thank you for taking the time to explain this. Everyone needs to just get with the program, wake up and smell the coffee. AI is here to stay, and I welcome as many artists of dogs and cats in any form to send their films in. As John also pointed out to me, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences has definitely given a green light to any AI
Yeah.
inclusion in a film. So no one need to feel that it's inferior or that they're not seeing the real deal. Humans were involved in the making of John's movies and the other ones in the film festivals. Thank you, John. Keep up the good work, and please do consider Cats and Dogs for one of your wonderful movies.
Tracy, thank you for having an open mind. Thank you for inviting me to do this. And I am thrilled and delighted to have been a part of your festival. In fact, I have my medal
Yes,
is hanging
John,
right here,
look at that.
and
Isn't that marvelous?
I'm very proud of it. So
You
thank
should
you.
be. You're welcome. And next year, 2026, starting in January, the film festival will be traveling the country to about 75 cities. And you people can catch it and they can see the singular affair of the missing ball and see what you all think. I think you'll love it. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Tracy.
Care.
Bye-bye.